AITA for refusing to demote my dog after my sister gave her baby the same name. I, 26F, have a golden retriever named Charlie. And no, this isn't going to be some cute, lighthearted story about a dog. I promise, it's about to get really messy. To give you some context, I adopted Charlie 4 years ago when I was going through a tough time in life. I had just ended a long-term relationship, and I was feeling incredibly isolated. I didn't know what to do with myself, so I decided to adopt a dog. I walked into the shelter one day, and there he was, this goofy, shaggy golden retriever with a big smile and sad eyes. I didn't think twice. I adopted him that day and named him Charlie almost immediately. Charlie became my lifeline. He was there through every high and low. We went on hikes together, cuddled through long Netflix nights, and basically, he was my emotional support before I even realized I needed it. I named him Charlie not because I was trying to make any sort of statement or anything. It just seemed to suit him. He was this warm, loving dog who always seemed to understand me, and Charlie felt right. 4 years later, Charlie and I are inseparable. He knows his name, he responds to it, and it's just a part of who he is. I've invested so much time and love into him, and he's my best friend. You can imagine how attached I am to him and his name. Fast forward to a few months ago when my sister, Emily, 29F, gave birth to her first child. I was absolutely thrilled for her. I love being an aunt, and Emily and I have always had a pretty close relationship. We went through a lot together growing up, and while we've had our differences, we've always been there for each other. Her pregnancy was a big deal in our family, and I couldn't wait to meet the little one. When I found out Emily and her husband had decided to name their baby Charlie, I didn't think too much of it at first. I'm sure that's a surprise, considering what's happened since then. But hear me out. My immediate reaction was to think, oh, that's funny. We're gonna have 2 Charlies in the family now. I even laughed it off with Emily when she first told me. I mean, we've had family members share names with pets before, so I didn't see the harm. But that was before I knew how much of a big deal it would become. It all started at a family gathering a couple of weeks ago. Everyone was hanging out, catching up, and I was sitting on the couch with Charlie, playing with him. I called him over to me as usual. "Charlie, come here, boys." And that's when Emily pulled me aside. I could tell from the way she was looking at me that something wasn't right. So I braced myself for what was coming. She started off with this forced smile and said, "Can we talk for a second?" At this point, I had no idea what was going on. So I followed her to a quieter part of the house, and she got straight to the point. "I need you to stop calling your dog Charlie." I blinked a few times, processing what she was saying. Was she serious? "What? Why?" I asked. She looked at me like I was missing something obvious and said, "It's confusing and disrespectful to me and my son for you to keep calling your dog Charlie now that he has the same name." My brain just kind of short-circuited for a second. I tried to keep my voice even when I said, "Emily, my dog's name is Charlie. He's had that name for 4 years. I'm not going to change it." But she wasn't backing down. "It's not just about you and your dog, though. It's about my son. He's a person, not a pet. It's going to cause confusion, and I just think it's unfair to him that he shares a name with a dog. And it's going to be weird at family gatherings when people are shouting Charlie and we don't know who they're talking to." She went on, saying how it would be awkward for her son to grow up sharing a name with a pet, especially one as well known in the family as mine. And then Emily dropped the bombshell. She asked me to rename my dog. I was floored. I've had Charlie for 4 years. He's been a constant in my life, and I couldn't just change his name like that. It would confuse him and honestly just feel wrong. I tried to explain all of this to Emily, but she didn't seem to care. "I know it's a big ask," she said, "but I really think it's necessary for the family dynamic. It's just unfair for me and my son to deal with this." I told her that I wasn't going to rename Charlie. I love him, and that's his name. He responds to it, and it's not something I can just change on a whim. I also told her that if it was such a big deal to her, maybe she should have checked the family history before choosing the name. But she wasn't having it. The conversation ended with her getting really upset, calling me selfish, and telling me that I was choosing a dog over her child. I tried to keep calm, but inside I was really shaken. How did we go from celebrating her baby's birth to a full-on confrontation over something like this? Things didn't get better after that. Emily barely spoke to me at the family gathering, and I could feel the tension in the air. My parents got involved, of course. My dad, ever the peacemaker, said he thought it was ridiculous to expect me to change my dog's name, but my mom said I should just consider it to keep the peace in the family. I felt like I was being pulled in 2 directions. On one hand, I had my dad backing me up, but on the other, my mom, who normally doesn't get involved in stuff like this, was saying I should do it for the sake of harmony. I felt torn and honestly pretty unsupported. The worst part? The rest of the family started getting involved too. My cousins, aunts, and uncles started weighing in on the situation. Some thought I was being stubborn and should just change Charlie's name because, in their words, it's just a dog. Others said Emily was being unreasonable and that her son could just learn to share a name like anyone else. The whole thing was making me feel like I was losing control over a situation that shouldn't have been a problem in the first place. At this point, I just don't know what to do. I love Charlie so much. He's been there for me through thick and thin, and his name is part of who he is. Renaming him would not only be confusing for him, but it would also feel like I was just giving in to an unreasonable request. But on the other hand, I don't want to lose my sister. Emily is upset with me, and I can feel the tension every time I see her. I've been thinking a lot about whether I'm being too stubborn, and I'm wondering if I'm missing something here. I've never had this kind of conflict with her before, and it feels like I'm being forced to choose between my dog and my sister. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to rename my dog? Should I just suck it up and change his name to keep the peace? Or is Emily being unreasonable? I genuinely feel stuck, and I need your thoughts on this.